Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cult Musical Zone. And I am so excited today because we are talking to the director to one of the most underrated but amazing cult movie musical masterpiece ever, Sons of Steel. So we're going to introduce ourselves. Of course, I'm James, and I'm the curator of cult musicals. And we have Helena, who is one of our frequent guests. So, Helena, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Hey, I'm Helena. I like movies a lot. I like cult musicals a lot, and I like James a lot, and I like Sons of Steel also a lot, a lot, a lot. I just watched it again this morning, so I'm ready to talk about it.
And Gary, if you don't mind, could you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Gary Keedy. I'm from Australia. I'm here at the moment in summer, and I'm looking forward to chatting about my obsession, the film Sons of Steel.
Fantastic.
Oh man! So the first we usually get into the first time we saw this. So before, way before cult musicals was even a thing on Instagram, when I was growing up, in the early days of the internet, I always wanted to discover cult musicals. So I wasn't a Sound of Music fan. I wasn't a Grease fan. And so I was much more into the edgier, darker, weird, obscure cult musicals like such as Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Shock Treatment. And it was around 2000 or 2008 that I discovered Sons of Steel. Bootleg, really. Someone ripped it from VHS and put it on a site. And I saw it and I left it alone for a bit. And then a couple years ago, I came back to it because it was released on VOD. And
Mm-hmm.
I that was my segue into Sons of Steel. And I'm not going to rant too much about it because I love it so much. But Helena, if you want to talk about how you got introduced to this film?
So this is a deep cut that I didn't actually know about. So James said we're going to do it. The director's going to be on. I was like, that's awesome. Okay. So I went over to my local video store and rented it on the existing Blu-ray. Now I know that there is a brand new Blu-ray, and I wanted to say congratulations on that for Vinegar Syndrome is going to release it, which is that's a really good label, and they are doing an amazing job with it. So I
Yep.
watched it on that, and then I just watched it again this morning on Tubi because I know that Vinegar Syndrome and like Umbrella Entertainment and all those really good labels that re-release this stuff kind of populate them out on Tubi kind of first, which is really,
Yep.
really cool. So it's like I feel like I kind of got to see the restoration of it, and it was like the whole open matte and everything because the Blu-ray, even the Blu-ray that I had before was it was matted to like 4:3. So it was really nice to
Yeah.
see it cleaned up and full aspect ratio. And so it's great. It's like one of those, so many of these movies are coming back right now. So we've got like Sons of Steel. We've also got the Dr. Caligari from 1988 just came out again on a beautiful, beautiful Blu-ray. Shredder
Mm-hmm.
Orpheus just came out. So it's like all of these like super deep cut, gorgeous musicals from the 80s and 90s are coming back out that are just super alternative and really cool. So I got it. Yay.
Well, Gary, Helena is a big proponent and big like cheerleader for physical media. And she's turned me on to physical media because the importance of physical media versus streaming. And so it
Right.
is congratulations because there's lots. I mean, the Keanu Reeves, Drew Barrymore 1980s musical Babes in Toyland just got released for the first time on Blu-ray recently. So it's a big thing for physical media, especially with how fickle streaming is. So before we get into
Yep.
the plot and the history of this film, I mean, how do you feel about it finally getting the light of day that it deserves?
Well, that all comes from being able to digitize it, and there was only two 35 mil prints left of the film. The all of the original negatives and everything are gone, so I had to. I'd given them away to the National Archives of Australia, and I had to get them back, and then use the two prints to try and get one that didn't have an was so badly in disrepair that I could get it digitized. And I could only do a 2K scan of it. I couldn't do a 4K because
Mhm.
you can't 4K scan a 35 mil print. You need the negative. So I got that. Then it took almost a year to clean it up because it had scratches on it from the actual 35 mil print I had done the circuit of film festivals since 1988, so it had been around.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it was in pretty bad shape. And then I peeled off the sound, and we remastered the sound completely, split it all up, remastered it, and then put it back on for the Umbrella release. So she's really in probably the best shape she's been since I made it. Probably better, actually, because we added a few little sound effects along the way, which we could with throwing it up on Final Cut Pro, and I did it all myself. My brother helped me, and I could fill in a few of the little gaps. I couldn't fix the parts where the script ended up on the edit floor or whatever, because it was a film that we made on the budget of probably the catering budget of an American film. So it was a very difficult film to make with no money. And so we lost lots of the plot, and I couldn't repair that, unfortunately. But we got a great print. The one that's coming out with Vinegar is absolutely gorgeous. The sound is fantastic. Enjoyed the rides putting out the album on vinyl, on 4 types of vinyl, and it's also on cassette. So it's just fantastic, and they're of course simultaneously doing that with Vinegar. So I'm really looking forward to that release, because it's never been released in America. I spent years trying to get it away in America, and I just couldn't get it released. It was just too difficult when it cost so much to produce a print. So I couldn't do a run in the cult theaters. It wasn't until the digital age came in that it opened opportunity. So
well,
that's where we are.
You're speaking so many things that Helena she knows everything about print. She knows everything about home media, but she also knows a lot about film circuits. She lives in Portland, Oregon, and there's one theater that plays Best Little Whorehouse, Earth Girls Are Easy.
We have a huge film. I mean, hopefully Sons of Steel. I mean, a lot of Vinegar Syndrome things get released to the Hollywood or Japan cut. So I'm hoping that eventually they'll get a screening going.
It played there. 5 years ago with a film group. They wrote to me and asked on Facebook and asked if I could send them a copy of it, and I sent them. What did I do? I ran off a DVD myself.
Wait,
and sent it over.
Yeah, was that Weird War that did that? I think Weird War did that. That sounds familiar.
I think so. Yeah. I
love those guys. Those guys are they are the most metal art gallery film collective you would ever care to find in the US. So I'm so glad you found Helen with them.
They're in love with it. They just love the film, and they said, "Oh, we'll pay you. We'll pay you because we'll have people come there." And I said, "That'd be ridiculous. Enjoy it. That's what I made it for."
Totally. Well, you should definitely get back in contact with them, and I'm sure they're very aware that the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray is going to come out. So I'm sure it's time to bring it back with them. I'll whisper to Dennis. I'll Dennis, put it back on.
Before we get into the history and the plot and the amazing music, I know Vinegar Syndrome. Helena's much more the physical collector. She knows all the labels. Vinegar Syndrome, from my knowledge, they do a lot of films that are just niche and just deserve to be. I feel like they're really up and coming. And I think, did you choose them or did they choose you? How did they go about that you got connected with Vinegar Syndrome?
It came through Umbrella, because Umbrella are an Australian company in Melbourne. They knew about the film. I knew the owner very well, and we spent some time trying to repair Sons and get it together, because they've got a very big interest in making sure that these films of this genre and this era get an opportunity again that they mightn't have had before. And so that they connect up with people around the world that are of the same vein. So Vinegar Syndrome's obviously that. So it's a really unique relationship, and I wish I'd had it back in 1988. So that's how, through Umbrella, Jeff Harrison.
And I'm pretty sure it's already here out in the UK. I know because I bought VOD from the Google Play Store, but I know it's been out here in the UK for a bit. But I think you'll be surprised in America. It'll probably pick up steam and pick up an audience because of Vinegar Syndrome. I mean, physical collection, physical media in America's, I would even argue, is bigger now than it's ever been. I mean, vinyl outsells MP3s now. I mean, that's why Dolly Parton's new album, she released it to cassette and she released it to vinyl. And it's like, it's great. And it's Helena always, for every episode, Helena always tells us, go and buy the Blu-rays, go buy the DVDs.
Do the pre-order. Do the pre-order now. It's still in pre-order and it's on sale. I mean, hell, go do it.
Because with how fickle streaming is, I mean, there's going to be a day when streaming is not going to be top dog anymore. They're going to find weird ways to do it, and I Helena sort of taught me into it to like start collecting physical media, because you don't ever have to worry about it being censored. You don't have to worry about it being edited or it being taken off. So I do want to applaud you for that, and I think Vinegar Syndrome, and there's a couple of other Arrow Video. Is Arrow Video in the States?
Arrow is good. Arrow is British and I think also in America.
Yeah.
And there's also like Mondo
Shout Factory,
Mondo Video, all that stuff. Yeah. All good things.
Right.
Well,
fantastic.
now it's already got its feet into the I guess the consciousness of America. We like eccentric things, and we'll get into this a little bit, but I think Sons of Steel had a premonition, I think, and a lot of the things that happens in Sons of Steel. I mean, art always predicts the future. Art always predicts life. And I think rewatching it recently, I'm like, it's a little bit too close to home with some of the things
It's frightening. It is.
It is.
I mean, we're doing the AUKUS deal in Australia at the moment to allow nuclear submarines to come into the harbour. And that's the whole basis of Sons of Steel. That's frightening.
Don't get on that ferry. Don't get on the ferry. That's all I'm saying.
That's right.
Ferry's away.
And I'm so excited to talk to you. But before we get into this history and the plot and the music, I just wanted to say that some of my favorite cult musical masterpieces are Australian. Australia has such a cult musicals have such a presence in Australia. You've got Starstruck, the famous movie, the cult musical Starstruck. You have The Return of Captain Invincible. Yep. You have one of Helena and I's favorite movies, the pirate movie.
Yes.
The pirate movie, Christopher Atkins and Christy McNichol. Yeah. And then, of course, the Australian import, Olivia Newton-John. But Sons of Steel fits right in, and it's completely different than anything. I don't know a lot about Australian cinema, but it's completely different than any other cult musical that came from Australia. And were you on the pulse of something that was happening in film at that particular time? Or where did this masterpiece, this insane plot come from?
Well, we're kind of like the potpourri of the world. Australians, we're the antipodes. So, any further away and you're on your way back again. Right. That's what I always say. So I used to pack my bag and off I'd go to London and to New York and to Los Angeles and pick up on everything I could. I lived in London as a composer and producer at Chapel Music in New Bond Street in the late 70s. And I produced records there, and I produced heavy metal bands, and I got right into it. So, and then I'd bring it all back to Australia, and I'd try and invest into Australia what I'd learned from around the world. And so when the opportunity came up, I started my own record label in Australia, one of the first independent record labels in 1978. And from that, I started making music videos and then trying to sell these crazy music videos around the world. This is when MTV just started to come about, and I found a medium where you could express yourself more than just in a song. And I'm going, I could take the song and I can show people what I'm thinking. I'll give them some visual leads. So I was really getting into the music video side of things. So I started making music videos, and then people were asking me to make their music videos. So I'm thinking, wow, this is interesting. And then I saw that you could make short films, and I thought, oh wow, fantastic! I could try and get a short film into a cinema. So I went to Hoyts, who are a very big chain of cinemas in Australia, and said to them, how about I make a couple of short films and you put them on ahead of your blockbusters? And they said, well, we're not going to give you any money. And I went, oh. And they said, well, but we've got a place for it. Matter of fact, we've got one coming up. We've got June being released. And I said, oh. And they said, this is going to be, a massive, massive promotion. It's got Sting in it. It's really cooking. So if you could make something rock and roll, but not a music video, something of a bit more substance, 13 minutes long. And I went, oh, then, okay, we'll give you the window. So I rushed back to my little office, which was my record label, and I thought, now how am I going to get the money to make something like this? It's got to be on 35 mil. It's going up against a massive blockbuster by De Laurentiis. I mean, goodness gracious, I don't want it to look disgusting. So I was looking at the television that night, and I saw a thing about Esso. Esso's they supply fuel, petrol for cars around Australia, gas stations, etc. And they were promoting the tiger in the tank they used to have, and they had a picture of a car with a tiger's tail hanging out of the tank and all that. It was really funny. And they were promoting a lion or a tiger at the zoo. And I thought, oh, they're pretty adventurous. So I rang them up the next day, and I went to see the promotions guy, and I said, hey, listen, how about you sponsor a film? And they said, what, ask the questions about what the distribution is going to be, blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, what's it about? And I said, oh, I don't know. And he said, and I looked behind him, and he had a poster on the wall that Esso was sponsoring cricket. So I said, how about it's about cricket in the future? And they said, wow. He said, look, if you can go and write a script this afternoon and come back again with it, I can get it approved tomorrow, and maybe we can give you some money. So I ran back to the office, wrote a script. It was called Nightmare. It was about cricket being discovered in the remnants of Sydney after a nuclear holocaust in the future. And it had a hologram in it that appeared out of nowhere and sang a song. And I laid it on this guy, and he's gone, whoa, this is great. Well, yeah, we'll sponsor it. He said, if you can talk our advertising agency into providing you a budget, then we're okay. So I went to their advertising agency, and I sat with this guy, and he said, oh, listen, I can't give you any money. We're spending it on ads and all sorts of stuff. And I said, I'll give you 10% in your pocket. And he said, let's go and have a beer. So we went and had a beer, and I gave him 10 grand, and I got $90,000, and I made a 13-minute, 35 mil Dolby Stereo short film called Nightmare that I then toured to every festival around the world until I was capable of raising the money, ultimately through the government system here, which is why we got these sorts of films, because the government allowed a tax deduction for people investing in films, and that allowed us, the director or the writer director, to have creative control over whatever they made. So it wasn't subject to studios saying, no, don't do this, and her. It gave us this freedom. And that's why you got Mad Max, all of those films in that era, Crocodile Dundee, it was just an explosion of right from the creative level, as opposed to formula. And that's why you got in the 80s that, and then in the early 90s that collapsed, and that was the end of that. So, we managed to produce in that time some incredible films. Wasn't so much that they were out there as blockbusters around the world, and Crocodile Dundee was, and Mad Max eventually became very, very successful. But really, we made a lot of cult films at that time.
Right. I feel
So
like we,
go ahead.
hey, James, before you continue, I feel like we need to teach James a new word here. And that
Okay.
word is Ozploitation.
Oh,
You've heard of
yes.
Exploitation.
Yes, Ozploitation. So
Superior.
that's the blanket term. So I think this was the first Ozploitation musical. I really wanted to point that out, is that you get your chocolate and your peanut butter and then you mix those together and it's like amazing because you get that.
Well, it was the Ozploitation people, the people that created Ozploitation that introduced me to Umbrella, because
Right.
they got onto me because they love Sons of Steel, and they got on me and said, "Oh, we're working with Umbrella at the moment, so why don't you talk to Jeff Harrison?" And boom, 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 off we went.
Yep.
I feel like Oz. I'm not sure. I know what Oz is because of like Australia and ploitation, of course. But is that like a label that does
No,
something?
it's just a term. It's a term for that kind of
Uh,
film. So it's kind of like they have
Yeah.
Ozploitation. In Canada, they have Canucksploitation, which is all weird Canadian films that they made in the 80s, like Pin and all of those. So
Yeah.
it's exploitation, but it's just regional exploitation
Yep.
Well,
films.
there's that Australian cult musical that was from the 70s called Oz, Rock and Roll Road Movie, or 20th Century Oz, and it transports the original, it's glam rock and stuff. So I guess Pirate Movie would have came, and Starstruck and Sons of Steel would have came out of that 80s creative freedom that the Australian film industry allowed then.
That's it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
great. Amazing that they didn't force you to have American actors in it, which is also really cool. So it's not
Well,
like
that
you
was
just
good and bad.
shoehorned in there.
Yeah, the biggest problem with that was that it gave the Americans the opportunity to knock the film back.
Right.
When we tried to sell it there, I mean, I had New World Pictures very close to releasing it in America. They loved it, but when they found out the budget was so low, they were embarrassed, and they didn't. But they always had problems with the accent. It's not so apparent these days, but back then they didn't like the accent. They wanted subtitles. I mean, they did the same to Mad Max, if you remember, right? They wanted to dub Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
So
I did turn the subtitles on for a second, for a little bit. I did actually turn the subtitles on. So it did, for my second viewing, it did help. So
yeah. No, it's understandable. I mean, our accent isn't that understandable to the American people, but it shouldn't really it shouldn't have really affected it the way it did. I mean, I think in those days, I suppose there was so many opportunity or so many creative things vying for the same market that it made it more difficult. That's all,
yeah.
Because
Well, there was
Sons
a
of Steel
Vogue
came out. Go ahead.
Oh, there was a Vogue for sort of the Australian things once Crocodile Dundee came out, and we had commercials
right.
with the I forget the Oi guy. He was on commercials and things. So I mean, there was a Vogue for it. Yeah, right about the time that it came out. So it would have probably slid in quite nicely.
Well, we were in LA at the same time. They were there selling Crocodile Dundee. We were there too, trying to sell Sons of Steel. And I go into the record labels, for instance, with the soundtrack and say, have a listen to this, and they'd say, no, we're only interested in things that sound like Guns N' Roses. And I said, why do you want? They're already a success. Why do you want another Guns N' Roses? Because that's where the market is, son. I go, right. So we knew it was going to be like that. So it was very difficult. But at least these days we've opened that up much more.
Absolutely.
So Sons of Steel came out in '88, correct?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, premiered in Cannes.
So
nice.
So what we usually talk a lot of the musicals that we love and talk about in this blog are from the 80s. And the 80s was a really weird time where it wasn't fashionable to make a musical. So a lot of the 80s musicals like Grease 2, Earth Girls Are Easy, Teen Witch, Rockula, they all flopped and of course resurrected. The only successful cult musical that we talked about in the 80s was Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. So you think it's a combination? Shock Treatment.
Shock Treatment. Yeah. Rocky Horror was 74. So, but that, I mean, that just, that's still popular.
By the time that got around the world, people were performing in the theaters watching it, right? And
Mhm.
that was one of the
Exactly.
influences I had at the time. It was just
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, so you think it's a combination of it's A, ahead of its time, B, the way that the whole movie industry was headed, and three, that maybe it was really hard to sell like an Australian cult rock musical. Do you think it was just a combination of all those things that made it so
Yeah.
hard to sell it?
Yes. Yeah. Indeed, without a doubt. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I
and
mean,
the, and
and
the narrative of the film didn't make it inviting, and
Yeah.
the ugliness of the lead. The character Black Alice himself, I wrote him as a parody of everything that was rotten out there in the world, and
Mhm.
he just laughed at himself and he laughed at everybody. But today he's
yeah.
more understandable than he was back then. you know,
Definitely more of an anti-hero when
he's
anti-heroes
an
weren't
anti-hero.
the thing back then,
He acknowledged the camera.
Yeah.
He
Which
did
I love.
bizarre things.
Mhm. Broke the fourth wall. I love it.
About the plot now, like
Mhm.
Shock Treatment, it took me a few viewings to actually get it. Helena and I were talking about it. And then after
Mhm.
like the third viewing, I'm like, oh my God, I get it. I get exactly what this is talking about. This is talking about fascism. This is talking about,
Yeah.
I mean, it's predicting like Shock Treatment, predicted,
Mhm.
Shock Treatment predicted the world that America is right now, but our America is even more extreme than Shock Treatment. But I think, but I think with Sons of Steel, it took a couple of times because I mean, you start in the future, then you go in the past, and then you come in the future again. So it's a time traveler trying to stop what happens in the present by going to the past, but he happens to be in our future. But
Mhm.
it took a while for me to really understand this sort of what's that word, Lord?
Totalitarian.
Totalitarian.
Totalitarian government, Oceania, who is
Mhm.
basically like all the government it is now that they tried to control people. And
Mhm.
Black Alice is this artist. And what are the first things that fascists want to go after? They want to go after art. They want to go after
Yes.
movies. They want to go after music. And I love the opening scene of the movie where Black Alice and his band are performing something in the air, and
Mhm.
the government's basically sitting there watching, making sure he doesn't say anything offensive. I mean, is that most of this stuff may have been unconscious or conscious, but were you conscious of everything that you were trying to do with the plot?
Yes, exactly. The the basis is that he has become so powerful with his octagon peace movement as a singer.
Mhm.
He had become, as they were in those days. I mean, we had David Bowie and people that were icons of an entire movement of people. So Bowie was out singing heroes and stuff, and like uh, influencing the minds of the young people, and older people didn't like that, especially people in power.
Mhm.
Governments, etc., all wanted their way, and they didn't like all of these drug infested people.
Effeminate as well.
Yes, and the whole feminist thing, and the at the time, I brought up the gay issue. I wanted to keep that in there so that we understood that it was trying to emerge our identity that was being suppressed uh, at a governmental level, and I could see how that could get worse in the future. And that's what the Oceania government was, the suppression of everybody. It was a fascist government. The only
Mhm.
thing that was breaking that down was a rock singer who had a massive following, who could rally people to stop things happening. And that's why they wanted to eliminate Black Alice
And
in the
the thing
plot.
is, I know, and this might not be conscious, but it's very Jesus Christ Superstar
Oh,
in
true, true.
terms in terms of like this Christ-like figure who has a devoted following. And they're like, there's a line in Jesus Christ Superstar that the Pharisees are saying this Jesus must die. And it's kind of
Yes.
like, Black Alice is pre Marilyn Manson, who I love. But it's like every generation has this sort of voice. And I know that sounds like so cliche to say, but every generation has some voice that people are like, oh my God, this person's going to lead kids astray with their music and their gender bending. And
Yes.
I think it's great. But unlike unlike other characters, I don't think Black Alice bends to their will, and I don't think he's scared of them.
No.
And I think I'm not big into Australian politics, but was there anything that was happening in culture or society during that time in Australia that you were, I guess, frustrated with that this sort of came out of?
Oh yeah. It was the attitude in Australia that we succumbed to all the other powers. We bent to everybody. And the philosophy of those powers we all thought was wrong. You know, we come out of a period in the 70s where I'd been called up to go and fight in Vietnam and stuff, and I took the government to court, and I won. I won in court.
Congrats.
And you know, I was a hippie. I come out of the 60s, so I'm 72 now. So I was rallying on all those things, and all of the songs that I've ever written and all the music was always protest movement songs, disguised in certain ways with all sorts of tricky things in them, so they'd get airplay without being, pushed aside because they had, content. So I used to have to disguise stuff. The film is like that. It's expressing those values. All of those hippie values are in there. We've got a time traveling rock star. No one's ever done that. I've written a series of 8 books now in the Sons of Steel series.
Oh wow.
that are just now coming out. Right, they're on overdrive at the moment. So I'm on the 9th book. So
I'm so excited.
I've traveled him right through time. I've brought him right up to speed, and you can really understand the story more, in the books, the philosophy of it.
What
It
makes
seems to
this
be
go ahead.
like a graphic novel? Like it would make an amazing graphic novel.
Yeah, we're doing that as well.
Wonderful.
Actually, the first comic comes out in about a month's time. We've just nearly finished it. So
Right.
So we're he's not a superhero. He's an anti-hero in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And I like that. He doesn't put on a leotards and jump up and fly into the sky. He gets out there and he calls a spade, and he's not afraid of anyone. That's the heavy metal element. That's why I brought that. I learned that from producing heavy metal bands, right, and writing songs for them. Out of all the bands, all the music genres of the time, of the late 70s and up to the end of the 80s, the heavy metal bands didn't give a shit about what they said, right? And they put out music that had some incredible stuff in it musically. They were almost classical, some of it. The classic heavy metal that was coming out was just incredible. You got to remember that bands that we now call progressive rock were actually heavy metal bands. Pink Floyd was a heavy metal band, Zeppelin, AC/DC, who aren't heavy metal at all, but they were classified as heavy metal because of the guitars. So that gave them license. It gave them license to go out there and go, yeah, right? and that's what we all wanted to do to the world. We all wanted to go, yeah,
Right, totally.
listen to us, right? Yeah, so that I took that heavy metal thing and the iconography that's connected with it. I thought that's all really wonderful stuff. I mean, the logo behind you, I made that on a Mac 512.
Oh, wonderful.
It's sort of I came up with that before I wrote the script because it said everything.
Any good metal band, that's how you start, is with that wonderful, the amazing logo. Awesome.
Right, it's all out of symmetry and everything. It's ridiculous.
And I love that you do the solves with it too, where the thunder thing comes across. Like that's fantastic.
Where they all come together, yeah.
Yep.
What makes this movie so great? I mean, it's very original plot wise, but the music of this movie I listened to more than I watched the movie itself because I just love the soundtrack. And I don't want to quote wrong, but did you compose the music for this movie?
Lots of it.
Yeah.
Lots of it. Yeah. I think it's all original except for one song, which is Something in the Air.
Up Newman, yeah.
So, but I did all the music. We recorded all the music before we shot the film, right? And it's all Rob Hartley, the guy playing Black Alice. That's him singing. That really is him. And he was the singer of the Black Alice band that I produced in 1983. all of the players in it were just out of the music industry. There's only two real actors in it, which was Dasha Blahova and Ralph Cotterill. That was they were the only two. They came from The Howling, the film,
which
The
I
Howling.
love, the marsupials. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they were in that film, and Philip Moyer, the director, is a friend of mine, and James Vernon, and he said, look, you might pull your actors off the street in terms of them being from the music industry, but really you'll need a couple of really good actors to bed it down so that they all feed off it. So we got them, and then we got Mark Hembrow, who played Mal, the blonde-headed guy. He was in Anzacs, and he was in a lot of movies at the time as a bit actor, but also a good secondary lead. And he was terrific too. And he was also in a band called Gone Troppo. So I tried to keep the whole music element there, so that when we recorded all the music, we played it all on set. It was like happening all the time around the movie. So it was like a full-on vibe all the time. And that's what attracted people like Grace Walker to be the production designer. I mean, Grace just finished all of the Walking Dead. He did that entire series as the production designer. He did The Damned. He did Crocodile Dundee, Mad Max. I mean, he's just the bee's knees of production designer.
The production design is beautiful, I gotta say.
It's
the costume, it's magnificent.
That was all location.
Yeah,
we couldn't afford sets. They were all night shoots. We weren't even allowed. We weren't permitted to shoot in a lot of those places. We had to sneak a 60-man film crew in and shoot and then run away.
Amazing.
Because the police had come.
Oh my God. But it looks so beautiful.
Grace was making 360 sets, so you felt like you were really in it. Not sets, but he was fixing up the locations we had to suit the bill. And it was just mad. And when he first looked at the script, he just loved it and listened to the music. But by the time we were ready to make it, he had 1/10 of the budget that he thought he was going to have. It was just frightening. We made that film for $800,000.
Insane,
right?
It does not look that at all. It's really great.
Yeah. And all of it. I lost a house. I lost a wife and 2 kids. I lost everything because I put everything into that film. Everything. I mortgaged everything I had because, it wasn't like you're going to get paid for making it. I didn't get a director's fee or anything. It all went back into the film because even though by the time the producer, the good friend James Vernon, was ripping pages out on a daily basis of the script, and the plot was falling to bits all over the place. It was just unbelievable. It's frightening how it floored the film. And he thought, and the rest of the production office thought that would be okay, that the film would still stand up, but it didn't. It affected it badly. You don't understand why the girl at the end, Black Alice gives her the shine at the end. That subplot's missing out of the film. So you sort of see a little bit about the shine when he's in the future and he finds it, but the connections are all gone. So there was a whole part at the beginning that was cut, which was he comes across the bikie movement on his way walking to the meeting he's going to have with the government, right? He actually, in the street, he comes upon a whole pile of bikers, and we make all the connection that the bikers are the ones that survive a nuclear holocaust, and they're the ones living in the future, right? Because they had bunkers and everything, which is all explained in the books, and it was in the movie, but it all got ripped out because we just couldn't shoot it at the time,
But I think fans forgive it. I think fans forgive it because I don't consider it a flaw. I don't consider it a flawed film. I think it's one of those films that you have to watch a couple of times to really get it. And the production, for instance, and I'll get into the music in a minute. One of my favorite scenes, Mr. System looks like it's filmed in a bank. I think it's gorgeous. And you have the blood splatter and the guns and the men in the mask. I mean, that's very Pink Floyd The Wall. And I think, the underground in the future, I think it doesn't look at all like there was a small budget. I've always wondered about the budget because it looks beautifully shot and gorgeous sets, and the locations that you all chose were top notch.
Well, Mr. System was shot in a French bank in Sydney that today is historically looked after as a preserved building, and it was at the time. It was on the list, and they'd given us permission to shoot provided we adhered to their policy and didn't make a mess. And
Oops.
after we'd sprayed blood everywhere,
Right.
it was
Lights
5
off.
o'clock in 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun was just coming up. We had all of this trouble on the set because Black Alice had been shot. He'd actually been his arm had been peppered by a gun that had gone off, and the security, the nurse had called it at the end of the shoot, and Alice is sitting there, and he used to get really cranky, right? And he's sitting there. He's got his arms all peppered with this stuff from a plug out of a gun, and he says, "Are we going to be able to finish this shoot?" And I said, "Oh, I don't think so. They've called it off." And he said, "No way. We've got to go out there and do it." I said, "No, look, the sun's coming up, right?" And he said, "But we've got to spray all the blood everywhere. I've got to kill everybody." And so he forced it, and when we shot it, the people from the bank had turned up.
Oh my God.
And there we were spraying, Grace Walker spraying blood everywhere in the lobby of this bank. It was incredible. They're trying to shut it down and we're trying to spray more blood.
I love that scene because I love the music. I love the music of this film. I listen to it so much. Something in the Air is beautiful. I love Rock and Roll Wreck, which is one of my favorite. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. I love how it's very like counting. But the reason I love Mr. System so much is because those lyrics are so powerful. But also, that is one of the musical sequences that doesn't necessarily fit in the movie, but it does fit.
No. Well,
because,
I wrote the song as a reggae. So it's a, "Hey, Mr. System, who lives like a book. You're really twisted, you can tell by one look," right? But when we got in the studio with it, Rob Hartley said, "I'm not singing a reggae." So he said, "Well, let's make a heavy metal reggae."
It's so good.
It came out so good.
Oh, it was really funny. It was really funny.
Helena, so when you first watched the movie, besides the plot, what it took a couple of times to really get it, what did you think of the soundtrack when you first saw it?
I like it. I think there's I got some like Bowie out of it, and I love what you did with Something in the Air. I mean, riding a giant dick off screen into the sky on stage. I mean, I'm an advanced bad movie watcher, and that was like, 5 minutes in, and I'm like, okay, I support this. But yeah, I think the music is great. I love Black Alice. I think Black Alice is badass too. So
God, he's so. And I wasn't aware. Go ahead.
I'd love to tell you something because I got a fan wrote to me from Hungary, right, and said we've got a film festival over here that's called Shockproof, and we want to put Sons of Steel on. And I said, yeah, sure, okay. So they put it on, and then they played it in a theatre. I sent them over a file, and then they wrote back and said it was so popular we want to put it on for another 2 weekends. And I said, yeah, okay. So they did. And I said, just send me photos, okay? So what made it so popular was when he rode the big dick out at the beginning, it's got made in the USA on the rocket, right? Mm-hmm. So it's actually saying that America sends missiles and blows up people.
Yeah. Like we do.
At and they love that because at the time, this year, right? The Ukraine thing was starting. right? And they were thinking this is a parody of what's really going on. So they
Wow.
were right into it. Anyhow, when they sent me the photos, everybody dressed up like the characters out of Sons of Steel, and they all got up and danced during each of the songs, which
This
was
is what
bizarre.
happens. This is what happens
Yeah.
with cult musicals.
Yep.
I know. And I got invited to the to the Revelation Film Festival in Western Australia, in Perth. So I got Jeff Duff together. Jeff Duff plays Sector, and
Yep.
Jeff tours all the time. He does a Bowie concert. He just sounds like David Bowie, and he's done 32 albums now. Jeff Duff, he's
Oh,
just
wow.
a fantastic artist. Anyhow, he's Sector. I call him Sector, even when I wish him happy birthday. It's always happy birthday, Sector.
Mhm.
So I said to him, "Listen, I've got an idea. We'll go to the Revelation Film Festival. We'll go, right? And then during the film, I'm going to cut a backtrack in to the film, and we'll get a microphone, and you're going to stand up and sing to the audience." And we did, and it just blew the audience away.
That's
They weren't
fun.
expecting it at all. It was just fantastic.
That's
So
so
yeah, I mean, getting that interaction takes it to another level, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and a lot of movie musicals, a lot of cult movies and a lot of cult movie musicals, they may not have found their audience then because, and I like, Teen Witch and Rockula and Shock Treatment and Sons of Steel, they're so ahead of their time, but especially in movies that are really deep, like
Mhm.
like Shock Treatment and Sons of Steel. People didn't get it in the 80s because it wasn't really happening to that level. But now when
Mhm.
you go back and watch Sons of Steel and Shock Treatment, you're like, oh my God, this predicted everything that we're living in. I mean,
Right.
even more, our world is even more scary than the world that Black
Mhm.
Alice inhabited and Brad and Janet Majors inhabited in Shock Treatment. So I think that's why
Right.
sometimes it takes years to really find its audience. But once it finds it, they're devoted.
Oh, absolutely. Gosh, I get fan mail all the time from all over the world, devoted fans that were fans at the time, mind you, because it was really popular in Germany, Hungary,
course.
that metal bloc, the Benelux countries, and they invest the knowledge of the film in their children. And I get their children writing to me trying to get copies of it because all of their VHS copies, because it mostly came out on VHS back in the right through to the early 90s, and they've all they're all gone now. They're all desperate to get a new copy. So it coming out on a Blu-ray is just blown everybody's mind. So, but it's just wonderful how they bring up their kids as Sons of Steel devotees.
Got to raise them right. You got to raise them right. That's what I say is like show that stuff to your kids.
Absolutely. I do that with my nieces and my cousins. I make them watch Teen Witch. And now that they got Teen Witch shirts and necklaces and stuff. So when this movie came out, of course, it was really hard to obtain. So there was a moment, I'm guessing, when it left the consciousness. When did you see, was it the rise of the internet? Because I first heard about Sons of Steel before I even had the internet. It was like 16. We didn't have the internet till I was like 15 or 16. I made a list on Microsoft Word of all the musicals I wanted to watch, and I typed in Sons of Steel. But when did you see Sons of Steel start to grow as this cult thing? When do you think was the first?
It was when I got round to making the internet, the advent of the internet, and I put up a website. I put up the official Sons of Steel website, and it just got hammered, right, by all of these people that were just desperate for more information on it, that had already seen it somewhere along the line, and it grew, and that's when I started to get inundated with requests for the sequel, because it was just asking for where it went to. Everybody wanted to know what happened with Black Alice.
The beginning, yeah,
and I couldn't get it together to make another movie, because you couldn't make Sons of Steel today. You just couldn't. No. And so it took me. So that was 1999, I think, when I really launched the website. So then all through those years, it was getting hammered until I started to get invites from film festivals that were interested in the 80s genre, really, mainly because there was there were students coming out of university and colleges and stuff that were really interested in that period. And it was music was leading it. You were getting certain songs coming back, and it's got stronger and stronger as time has gone on of discovery. People accepting the music as a norm, but then realizing there's music that didn't make those pop charts that was special. And now they're looking for it. And Sons of Steel holds that. It almost epitomizes it in a lot of ways. And so I, instead of trying to make another movie, I decided to write the book, the sequels in the book, which was called Cyber Wars. And then it goes on to Dark Energy, and then book after book after book, and it just hasn't stopped. And it's an obsession now. I can't stop writing it.
And I want to get to that. But when I'll probably want to, in your mind, you're probably, when you put this website and you started getting inundated with all these messages and fan mail, you're probably like, what the fuck is happening?
Absolutely.
You're probably like,
Yep.
Absolutely. I wanted to leave it behind. I'd lost a house, family, I lost everything.
Right.
It's like it owed me my life back again. And I thought, stop being so bitchy about it, for Christ's sake, accept it. There are people out there that love it. So look, I got invited to, there was a book festival in Melbourne, a science fiction book festival, and they wanted to play the film. So I was living in the Philippines. I've been living in Hong Kong, trying to make shit everywhere, right? And all sorts of stuff. I was producing records and that. I've never stuck at any one gig. And I get invited to go to this film festival in Melbourne. So I fly to Melbourne, and it's a rotten day. It's in the middle of winter, and it's freezing. And I'm at the top of the escalators at this convention centre where the film's going to play. And as I'm coming down the escalator, I see a sea of black below me, of people all dressed in black. And then as I get to the bottom of the escalator, they're all bowing and going, "We're not worthy. We're not
Nice.
worthy." And
you're probably like, what the hell?
It was the fan club that I didn't even know existed. It was just the most. I cried. It just.
I mean, that doesn't pay the mortgage back, but that's worth something right there.
I didn't care about the mortgage after that. It had found its audience, and that's all you ever do. That's all you ever do with your music, your films, no matter what it is that's creative, your books. You just want it to be enjoyed and to be thought about. Even people that go, "That fucking film sucks," I don't care. At least they saw it.
Right. And at least they're like, hey, if that asshole thinks the film sucks, I bet it's awesome. That's the whole thing. If somebody says something is bad, I'm like, oh, well, what is it? Let me evaluate that first before I evaluate the film,
Because we defend these movies all the time, and we defend Howard the Duck. I defend Howard the Duck as a great musical, and it's like people are like pod people. They're like, "Oh, that's a horrible movie." I'm like, really? Why is it a horrible movie? Tell me why Garbage Pail Kids and Howard the
culturally it's a horrible movie. It's not that it's a horrible movie. It's like in the culture it's a horrible movie. But this transcends that, I think.
It's so ahead of its time, and I think it's the beginning to find its audience, because I don't know if Helena said this or someone said it. I read an article that, because of the writer's strike and because of COVID, people use streaming platforms and home media to discover movies and musicals they had never seen before. And thank God for Tubi, because people are discovering movies in the way that younger generations discover stuff. They think it's brand new. They don't understand it's from the 80s.
True. Yeah.
And they think it's like something that they've discovered. But so this is sort of, it's different to anything that's out right now, because we're living in a time where art is kind of dead. It's all about profit. But even there's like a pushback with the audiences saying we don't want upteen sequels, and we don't want upteen remakes and upteen reimaginings with a new diverse cast that makes no fucking sense. But with Sons of Steel, it's in other movies, it's completely original. And I wanted to ask, since you have all these brand new things happening, has it reignited your passion for this movie and this project?
Never left me. Never left me.
Aw.
It's an obsession. It really is. I mean, Black Alice is the character is me, is a part of me. It's my pseudo me, I suppose. And through Rob, I expressed
Yeah.
it. And then after the movie, Rob couldn't cope anymore. Rob went and disappeared off the planet and became went to a monastery somewhere.
Really?
Became a Buddhist,
What?
Buddhist monk. Yeah, he couldn't deal. He couldn't deal with it. I mean, it's bizarre. He's every now and then in Western Australia, in Perth, there'll be a heavy metal band playing somewhere, and Rob Hartley will jump up on stage and sing a song and then disappear again into the ether.
Wow.
He never ever tried to act again. He just walked away from it. Matter of fact, we were in Sydney. The film had already premiered in Sydney, and it was a big event. And then the next day, we had an interview with SBS Television about the film with Margaret Pomerantz, who was a film journalist, still to this day. And so Rob was supposed to go. So we were supposed to pick him up in a car, take him to the interview. And he was staying at a hotel in Sydney. And he rang me in the morning and he said, "I'm not going." And I said, "Why?" He says, I can't deal with it. I can't be him anymore." And I said, "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Rob. You know, you're him when you get up on stage with the band. You know, you're Black Alice." And he goes, I can't be him. I really can't. He was a really well-spoken, beautiful man. If you look at the bonus items on the Blu-ray from Vinegar, you'll see him being interviewed at the premiere in Sydney of the film, and you wouldn't believe it's the same guy. You'll see the real Rob Hartley, just a quietly spoken, beautiful man, and he just couldn't deal with it. And when we went to pick him up, he wasn't there. He got on a plane and gone back to Perth. That's a 4-hour flight. Yeah. And so I had to do the interview. So I became the face of the film. I couldn't get Jeff Duff because he was out doing his gigs and stuff. So I had to become, I didn't want to, I didn't want to. So in a lot of ways that affected, I don't know, it did affect the future of the film because I didn't really have the cast out there beating the drum with it. But in another way, it kind of made it mysterious.
It is very mysterious.
Made it more cult.
Were you able
to,
I was going to say, were you able to get Rob back for any kind of interviews on I don't know what the extras are on the Vinegar Syndrome?
No.
Nothing, no?
I've spoken to Rob once. Yeah, I've spoken to Rob once on a telephone. I tracked him down. I rang him on the phone, and I was going to put on a live performance at the Sydney Opera House of the movie. So I was going to run the movie and then have the actual people up singing it and doing all that. And I'd written it all, got it all together, tracked him down to see if he'd come and play the part. And he just said, "Sorry, mate, no." So that was it. Never heard from him again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty sad, really.
He did such an incredible job. He did such an incredible job.
He really had the potential to be he was Vin Diesel before Vin Diesel. Think about
his humor and his humor in the movie. It's like, in the hospital scene with those two transvestite nurses that they're like hitting on him, he's like, "Ugh." I love that scene. And he's like,
he's kind of like he's like a Beetlejuice kind of character. Honestly, that's how I saw him.
The transvestite nurses, the nurse that goes to him, right, pushing the trolley, that's Nick Huxley. He's the fashion designer for the film.
Nice.
He's gone on to be a really famous fashion designer in Australia. We couldn't get an extra to play the part, and he was the only gay guy on set, so we used him.
Perfect. Wow.
And
I love it.
The lady with the hair is just fantastic,
Oh, the costumes are just amazing too. Yes.
But
I don't think you realize.
Jeff Duff had been banned from television in England because he came out with a record. He was living in England. It was a punk act, right? A gay punk act, and he came out with a song called "Hang the Poof," right? And it had a picture on the front cover of him being hung from a tree naked. So
Oh my
Terry
God.
Wogan, Terry Wogan, who was a famous interviewer on the BBC,
Yeah, I know Terry. Yeah.
invited Jeff to come on the show, and Jeff came on the show wrapped in cling wrap, naked with cling,
I love it.
wrapped in cling wrap.
Oh,
so,
punk. That's so
so
punk. I love it.
he was banned from he was banned from television out there. So he put out another record that came out with Virgin called "Give Me Back My Brain."
Give me that memory.
You got to find these records because they're brilliant.
I hope that
Yeah.
the cast I hope that the cast, and I hope you realize that, like, there are people who really, really love this movie and who discovered this movie and I think about Sons of Steel all the time. And like, I do like a cult musical of the day on Instagram, and I shared it and I'm like, your next favorite cult musical. Cause it's so original and it's so different. Like, it's so different than any other cult musical that I've ever seen. I mean, it's very Mad Max. It's very futuristic and dystopian, and I mean, you would never know that it had a small budget. It's beautifully done. The music is incredible. Like I said, I'm really excited for the soundtrack to come out. What label is it? Is it like Vinegar? Or
Enjoy the Ride's putting up. Enjoy the Ride work with Vinegar. Yeah, they work with Vinegar. They're putting it out on 4 different coloured versions on vinyl, and there's a couple of bonus tracks and everything. One track that wasn't used in the film just didn't make the cut, only because we had to limit it. And so it'll be great to hear it on vinyl again. So we remastered it, and it's really beautiful. So
nice.
Look forward to that.
will it be released on streaming, the soundtrack? Will it be released anywhere on streaming that people can stream it? Or is it going to be like a vinyl and cassette?
At this stage, I haven't put it on iTunes and all of those sort of things, because I'm trying to let it have its life on vinyl.
Yeah.
And Umbrella are going to be selling the film territory by territory around the world, and each time that they do that, I try and get a record label in that territory to release simultaneously the album. So that's kind of the object of the exercise, and then I'm going to follow it up with the books and the comics and all that sort of stuff, and trail it all around if I live that long.
You will.
Personally, I would love for you to put it on streaming, because my record player doesn't work. So if you put it on streaming, I will absolutely buy it and play it in my car on my iPod. So
I'll just send you a CD and you can dump it off. How's that?
Oh, hey, yeah. If a CD comes out, that I can do that too.
I'll send you
his email address.
Yeah,
when do these books? Because I've been looking for these books too. So because I know you posted on your website about these books coming out. But when are these books in the comic book officially coming out?
They're out now. The books are. If you go look on Amazon, they're all over it. Just type in my name and you'll see them all come up. And
nice.
Over the last 3 months, I've published 17 books.
Oh, yeah. Wow!
Yeah. So and the beauty of it is, I've got the Sons of Steel series, which is currently sitting at 7 books, with the 8th book about to come out. The 7 books are with, not only are they with the traditional outlets, but Overdrive came on board through Australia. Overdrive, a really interesting company. They're out of America. Overdrive put books into libraries, school libraries, college libraries, universities, and public libraries as ebooks. Okay, so they came to me and they got pretty excited about what I was doing. So they're really focused on Sons of Steel. So what we're doing is, in schools, because I wrote all the books for young adults. So
awesome.
I took a lot of the vulgarities out of it and made it a little bit. And so what happens is the kids can watch the movie that streams on Canopy, which is also part of Overdrive. Canopy, which is a streaming service, a free one for public libraries and schools. So the kids can watch the movie and then read the books as ebooks, which is just terrific.
This is
It's just-
amazing.
yeah.
I've used
So-
Tubi
so-
a lot. So how did Tubi contact you? Did you contact Tubi, or was that something that Vinegar did?
No, I think that's Umbrella.
Oh,
Yeah,
Tubi?
you know what it is? I noticed that Umbrella had a bunch of other sort of Australian releases on there too that I was like, ooh, click on that and click on that and click on that. So yeah,
Yeah,
they're
well,
doing good work.
They just started their own streaming service in Australia called Brolly, which is another word for umbrella, right?
Sure.
Which is
Yeah.
just Australian obscure films, which is
Oh my
really
God.
neat.
I'm
It's
gonna have to
got
get
like
into
Barry Humphries movie.
Oh,
all
Barry
the-
Humphries.
yeah. So it's got that and all of the classic Australian films. I mean, the cringe value of it's really high at the moment because people are finding fault with their political correctness with a lot of the films from that era. But personally, I don't give a shit. And
Me neither.
I stir them up anyhow.
I love it. I love politically incorrect shit. I love politically incorrect shit. Like, I love it. One of my favorite, I've tried to put subtitles on. One of my favorite scenes, of course, is the hospital scene. But when Black Alice, does he say, "See you later, Tail Gunner"? Is that what he says?
That's it.
What is
Tail
it?
Gunner.
Gunner,
That was him. I didn't write that.
I love it.
That's Rob Hartley. Rob Hartley, whenever he saw a gay person, he called them a tail
Yeah.
gunner.
Love it. See you later, Tail
I
Gunner.
thought it was terrific.
I love it. It's so great. It's so irreverent,
glad
and
you
I
got
loved
that.
it. I did.
So
it's my
glad.
favorite.
There's
Oh,
a
I love
few
it.
in
I'm a
there.
gay man. I'm
Game
a
of
gay man, but I love
approves. I
offensive gay.
approve. Yep.
Oh yeah, I love offensive gay humor. I think it's
And I
hilarious.
love a drag villain. So Sector was
Yeah.
like right up my alley. And in the fabulous gown at the end.
There's another
there's-
one in it, you know, where when he's talking to Meg backstage, who's the zebra girl,
Right?
Yeah.
right? And he's talking about he might find his watch or something, right? Right?
I got that one. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Well, you don't get it.
Oh dear.
We'll figure it out.
But I can
Well, the
explain it to you later, honey. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love when he's like, "See you later, Tail Gunner." I love it. I think it's hilarious. I laugh. I always rewind it. But there's something really dubious and scary about like a cross-dressing villain. I think because they play on the effeminate side, but they're also evil men. I think there's something great about an androgynous, effeminate, gay camp villain.
That's why
I
all the
think it's
Disney
great.
villains are gays.
I'm telling
made
you.
that. He made that character like that because I'd originally written Sector as just a really bad guy, and Jeff said, "Well, you know, because Jeff appeals to a gay audience," and
Right.
and he said to me, "You know, really, the future is going to be about equality, so let's
Mhm.
blow this up." And I went, "All right, let's go." So it was him that said, "Let's get a dwarf as my a little person as my offsider," because that just adds to the mystery. I knew it wasn't mystery;
It's
it was something
Mini-Me
else.
before-
It was
Like he presaged Mini-Me. It's like before Mini-Me was Mini-Me, Sector had a Mini-Me.
and it's so irreverent. I love it. It's so
And when he's in
irreverent, and the whole
when he's in the gold dress, towards the end there, that was just killer. The entire that was that guy that played that was the tail gunner.
Uh-huh.
He dressed up Jeff in this lame gold dress.
Mhm. Which is fantastic.
And Jeff was supposed to come out and seriously camp that, but none of us knew he was going to be dressed like that. So we're all sitting there in the location, and we had built the set of his lab in that situation, and out he came. And I tell you what, he just brought down the entire crew. It took
Amazing.
15 minutes to stop them laughing. It was just terrific. And it was one take, the same as when Jeff sings the rap about Black Alice and what had happened in the
Mhm.
past. He did that in one take. That whole
It's
thing.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I'd only written, it never had words to it. It had a poem. And the James Vernon came to me the night before the shoot and said, it'd be better if that was a song. And I said, oh, that's a bit tough. So I had an instrumental that was on the album called The Burn. And I said, I rang up Jeff and I said, Jeff, I'm going to write a lyric to The Burn. Can we get into the studio tonight and record it? And he said, okay, I'll do that. So we went into the studio at about 3:00 in the morning in the music studio at Albert's, and put down this song. He'd never heard it before, right? And then he got to the end and he sang over the melody where the guitar's playing. I locked the world out and I let it burn, and all that. And then that was it. We went and we were all knackered, and then we had to be on set at 6 a.m. And then out he comes, and one take, and he lip synced it without dropping a word. And it was just incredible because we only had enough film to shoot one shot. So there was a lot of single takes. When Alice sings With You, the song With You, the big ballad where he walks along the station, that's all one shot because we couldn't afford to stop and shoot again.
That's beautiful. I love cinematography and all of that.
Fantastic.
I hope Rob one day realizes how loved his character is and how people really just love that character. Hopefully, maybe one day he can see that people love Black Alice and that people really resonate with Black Alice and how Black Alice really is like really kick-ass. Hopefully, one day he'll get caught up in what it's become. Not only what it's become, but what it's destined to be.
I also think we've got to be conscious of the time that it was made. I'll tell you another reason for that. When I put my crew together, I picked my friend that we were both David Lynch freaks, and we'd been to see Blue Velvet. And
oh God!
We stayed in the theater to watch it twice. We loved it so much, right? Because it played again, so we had to hide and then watched it a second time. And his name's Joe Pickering, and you'll see that if you Google him, put him on any of the things, you'll find that he's done some fantastic films since. But Joe Pickering is a black Fijian, a fuzzy wuzzy, right? He's got fuzzy hair. And when I selected him as my DOP because he did Nightmare with me, and we were just so together on the vision of what we wanted to create with Sons of Steel, I took him along to the production meeting, and the producers and the investors in the film said, "But wait a minute, he's black." That's another thing we had to deal with. We had to deal with that, right? And so we were breaking the conforms at the time. That's the first digitally recorded film in Australia.
Right.
Wow.
There was two guys doing the sound from the beginning with big booms and everything, with traditional nagras and everything. And when I decided that was no good, and because I was going to do all the post-production in a digital recording studio, Albert's Digital in Sydney, they walked off the set. So I had to bring on a guy from a digital studio, my mate Paul Radcliffe, who's dead now, God rest his soul. And he recorded everything on a digital recorder so that we had total clean sounds all the way through it. Then we did everything on Fairlight in the post. And then when we had to get the sound across to 35mm, this is technical, we had to get it, we had to do it, we had to create an optical soundtrack, right?
Right.
How are we going to get a digital signal to optical? And Colourfilm, who were the lab in Australia, said can't be done. So we brought the machinery, the players from the recording studio to Colourfilm, and we spent 2 days in there messing with it. And Bruce Brown, who was a whiz, who did Young Einstein and lots of others after that film. Strictly Ballroom, he did that as well. Right?
Oh,
We were the film before Strictly Ballroom, so Baz got the benefit of us getting all the bugs out of the system. We got it sorted out, right, and then in came Strictly Ballroom. But we managed to get it across onto optical, which was very difficult. Yeah, because it was like 5.1 as well, so it was very difficult. So we broke all of those things only because I didn't come from the film industry, so I wasn't stuck with the conventions. I came from the music industry, which was speeding at a greater rate towards the digital regime. So I wanted to use all of that. And there
was so much pioneering, like work with the Fairlight and everything in Australia at the time. That's really cool.
Well,
you were able to use that.
Well, I was only hearing the other day that Hans Zimmerman, right? Who fantastic. He was one of the guys that developed Fairlight with the guys from Fairlight in Australia, and my mate Spencer Lee. And apparently they're rebuilding Fairlight at the moment.
Cool.
Hans is involved and Spencer Lee's involved because there's a need for it again, because it's such a unique and brilliant instrument, and the sounds off it were just extraordinary. I mean, Driving Miss Daisy was just about all Fairlight. Just fantastic. So
are they rebuilding an version of it, or are they just rebuilding the original machine? Because I know the original machine was like a big sprawling, crazy thing.
Yeah, I think they're refining it to create the new version of it. I think that's the plan, and they're making a documentary about the advent of it, which is happening at the moment, which would be great.
All over that. I'm all over that.
You're speaking her language. She knows the technical shit.
Nerds everywhere.
But I really enjoyed this musical, and I think people are going to rediscover it through Tubi and Vinegar Syndrome. And I think you said that it's, I'm not sure of the American audience yet, but I think it will find its American audience through blogs like mine, but also Vinegar Syndrome, Tubi, all these, different. What is it?
Weird War here in Portland. Yeah.
Yeah. What? So these little pockets of people and groups who are trying to push it, because it really needs to be seen. Not only because it's fun, it's irreverent, which I love irreverent musicals. I love things that aren't PC. So, but also because the music's so great. That's what makes it lasting. I love the music. Like, I just love the music. I wasn't actually familiar with Something in the Air. I actually Googled and found out it's like a cover of a classic song, Something in the Air.
Yep.
Which
was also
so well.
If I can diverge for 1 second, that song was also in The Magic Christian, which I don't know, James, if you know The Magic Christian. Yeah, so it's at the it's not the one that's at the beginning, but it's not because I know that at the end of the movie they're like throwing money into this giant thing of horror
at the end. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the song at this great climactic scene where people are, these like British guys in their little bowler hats and they're with their brawlies are jumping into this pool of poop with money being thrown in.
Money's being dropped out of a helicopter, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Such a great movie. But anyway, I digress.
What is this movie?
It's called The Magic Christian.
Oh, you got to see it. You got to see it.
Yeah, you have to see it.
One of the classics of all time.
Yep, it's got Ringo Starr, Peter Sellers, it's got Christopher Lee, it's got Raquel Welch. I mean, who isn't in it? Honestly, Yul Brynner as a drag queen. I mean, epic.
It's got the Bee Gees in it. They come out of the
course. Of course, the Bee Gees are in it.
It's fantastic. I met the writer of it in Los Angeles, and they. It's all of that same genre, like If, the movie If, right? The bits out of the Mr. System scene is from If.
Oh, okay.
Right, where he's shooting people, because that's what If's about, right? He's constantly killing people in his mind. Well, that's
Mhm.
I employed that with Black Alice because I wanted Black Alice to visualize uh, the violence in him, but his
Right.
anti-violence. That's why he
Mhm.
goes, I'm not as dangerous as that sub out there in the harbour with 15 million people living around it. You dig? You know, he he fights for peace, which is the wonderful anachronism.
Mhm.
Fighting for peace. Yeah,
Totally.
so, yeah,
That's awesome.
he he'll get peace no matter what it costs. And I love that.
yeah. That's it.
Sometimes peace doesn't come at a peaceful price. So it's like I
No,
think that's the whole point of it. It's in the
well,
music and it's just
yeah,
so irreverent. It's so
yeah.
irreverent and the characters are very much like out of a comic book or as a sci-fi film. I mean, all of the characters and even the villain looks like Boy George with the dreads. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so
Well,
there's so many things going on.
it's my son's doing the comic, and
Oh.
uh,
Oh.
he's bringing a whole new feature into it because he's gay. He's in a same sex marriage. He's living in Australia now. He was raised in England. I lost him when he was 4. He was a part of the catastrophe of the film. He was the child that I lost, and
Oh my
and we
God. Oh,
we found each other. We found each
oh my
other
God.
again, and now we're working together. He's doing
Oh,
all the covers of the
Oh,
books.
that's
He's
wonderful.
doing and since then I had another marriage and I had a daughter who this was in the Philippines, who unfortunately in Australia I brought them out from the Philippines, and she got pregnant, and after she'd moved away in her 20s, early 20s, and she didn't want the baby.
mm.
And so I got the baby and gave it to my son and
Oh,
his
wow.
partner, and
Oh,
they're raising the
My
child.
goodness.
So the child stayed in the family, which is just gorgeous, just
Oh,
gorgeous.
yes.
awesome.
So
It worked
there
out.
was a full circle. There is a first
Yes.
full circle sort of thing that happened with it. I mean, this sounds like a book. It really does sound like a book. I wonder if you would ever write like legitimately.
Behind
I
the
wonder if
real
like
story of Sons of Steel.
Yeah, well, but Brandon, my son, wants to do the spin-off, the story of Sector. So um, yeah, which is really exciting because it brings in it's a whole LGBT story.
Mm-hmm.
The evolution of that,
Hmm.
because Sector's going to represent that. He kind of does in all the books, but not to the extent my son can take it. So I
I
said, go.
wonder.
Love it.
I know with the whole, and I'll conclude with this, but I know with the whole like pushing back of like Disney Plus and Paramount Plus, and really like how consumers are really like saying fuck you to like all these corporations and the bullshit they keep pumping out. I wonder if I know there's like some conservative platforms in America, but I'm wondering if there's going to be like a niche sort of cult streaming platform that produces like experimental movies that are made not for profit, but for viewing. I wonder if, one of these days, something like that, like the spinoff of Sons of Steel, could end up on a platform like that. Maybe I'm wishing this into existence, but I feel like, maybe the way that we are in, the times that we're in with people fighting back against consumerism, I mean,
Mhm.
I think we really are.
Really
Viewers are
possible
really
that that
fighting it back.
already exists. Absolutely. I think
Yeah,
it's probably
yeah.
already out there in its infancy and it's waiting to mature.
I think the mediums that allow people to make films now, where you don't need the expense that we needed before, the lighting, the crew. I had 60 people in the crew every day. Turning a set around took a whole day. Today you can do it with 3 people and a digital
Mhm.
camera.
Yep.
Today you can do it with a cell phone. So yeah, that's the freedom that's been created by the digital experience, I think,
Mhm.
which is great. The only downside is that it makes everybody a filmmaker, and
Right.
everybody
Yeah.
a musician, and everybody a composer, and AI is taking that on a whole
Right.
different subject.
Oh,
Lose
fuck it.
like the
Yeah,
craft is really lost. That's unfortunate. Like even Neil Breen, I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he's a filmmaker he's a terrible filmmaker. But he at least used to make movies like in person with cameras, and his latest movie was all green screen and it was so awful. I was just like,
right.
uh anyway.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, that's the trouble, isn't it? But then
It's
again,
funny.
everything has a place, doesn't it?
Yep.
You know, one person's treasure is another person's garbage, or the other way around. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'll take all
Like,
the
I will-
garbage, collect the garbage and hug it. Yes.
yeah,
you
me
don't
too.
understand. You don't understand how often I have to fight people over the movie Showgirls. I'm like, Showgirls is not trash. Showgirls is actually a movie that is. He even said Showgirls is a warning about American consumerism and American culture, and it uses Vegas as to show that how you can never really win an American rigged system. So whatever, fuck everybody. But I wanted to ask you if you could ever put T-shirts like on TeePublic or Society 6 or Redbubble of Sons of Steel, because you would own it, so the money would go directly to you, and they would only take a small cut from
Put
like
this
Redbubble
logo.
or.
We need t-shirts of the logo.
Yeah, well, what have I got here? Hang on.
Yeah, if you need help, I'm a graphic designer. I know you've already got a.
Oh,
Oh, he's
So
got some.
They did a bag at Umbrella in Australia for the release,
Ah, cool. Yes.
oh.
Awesome.
which is a pocket nucleus. You put this over your head in the
Shit.
event of a nuclear accident.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
We
I
might need
actually
that
had
sooner than later.
It's better than
I had
duck
this
and cover.
This bag was on the seat of the premiere in Australia. I put it on every one of the seats, and I had MTV there, and it was a paper bag, and they were told that in the event of a nuclear accident, you put the paper bag over your head, right?
Yep.
So the guys at Umbrella said, "What a great idea!" So they put it out as a calico bag, which is nice. But yeah, I love all the paraphernalia. I've done it all. I've had the caps, I've had the shirts, I've done it all, and it's probably time to do it again. But I can
think
only
it is
focus on
time
a
to
bit
do
of
it
it.
again.
Yep.
I can only do a bit at a time. It's
Of
just a one-man
course.
operation with my brother.
Well, if you need any
son.
help, graphic designer right here. I
Well,
got you.
thank you. Yes. Okay. Well, we should
And-
connect with that because, yeah,
And the
absolutely.
great thing about like Redbubble and Society 6 and TeePublic, you can upload your own designs on there, and they don't take but like what 50 cent out of like or something
Really?
small.
Oh,
So it's
Oh, I have
artists. So
made-
that's
Like there are cult films that I'm into where I have had shirts made, I've had stickers made, I've had all kinds of things made. I actually had during COVID, I had masks made with logos on them. It's like you can make anything. I had a set of action figures made for Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is a super obscure movie. But it's like I have every
What?
character. I could be like, oh, da, 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 da,
Wow.
Wonderful
That's
time to
great.
be alive. You can just make everything that you ever wanted to go about movies.
Were they 3D printed or something?
No, they
Yeah.
actually were like sculpted. The guy sculpted them off of like Mego bases, like the little action figure bases, and they had the heads
What?
and yeah, it was really cool.
oh my
great, 'cause
God, you never know.
Every time I've tried to do action figures of Black Alice and stuff like that, you've got to get like 10 million of them done.
Sure.
order
No,
to-
no, not these days. I got a guy. We'll get you hooked up and
Oh,
you can
wow.
get yourself a Black Alice made.
Oh, that's
I'm
fantastic.
excited. I'm excited.
Yeah,
And I'm-
I
And
want
I'll
to do a
send
Sons
you-
of Steel. I want to do a Sons of Steel chess set.
oh my
Totally.
God, that'd be
Totally.
hilarious.
The octagon on one side and the Oceana on the other side.
Totally.
And
Yep.
I will send you, Helena, I'm going to send you his email address.
Please,
But
please.
I
Yes.
guess what we can leave this with, is there any scene, Helena, aesthetically or or cinematically that stuck out to you in this film that you just thought was gorgeous or so original?
Well, I just like the whole thing as an art piece. I mean, I think the character of Black Alice is so dynamic and so like cool looking that I mean, as a character, I think that really comes to the forefront of this. And then just the production design is just so gorgeous. So I love it. I think it's great. Can't wait to
And
get
the
my
way-
hands on- Oh, hey, I got one more question actually. Was Nightmare going to be an extra on the DVD?
It sure is. It's
Oh my
there.
God.
And there's a music video on there
Okay.
of a song called Parallel Worlds, which it's me singing with the guy that I was talking about that did the digital recording on. We had on the film. We had a band called Two Up, and it was the forerunner to a lot of things to do with Sons of Steel, which is why I put the music video there. But the interesting thing about the music video is that because I was in it, I couldn't direct it, so I got Alex Proyas to direct it, and Alex is in it.
Oh my God.
So he's actually in the video, so
Oh, that's
it's really
rad.
interesting. It was one of his early ones. This is before he did any movies.
Sure.
So there's that, and then there's the official video of "Fighting for You," which
Okay.
is that was the single that was released
Mhm.
for it. And there's a lot of little extras, loads of extras. So it's a really good little package, actually,
Absolutely.
especially for those people that are right into it. Because I spent a lot of time making the rockumentary about the making of it, which
Cool.
I did. I did the voiceover, and I got shots from those times and lots of stuff. So
Oh,
it's
that's
quite enjoyable.
I will be
Yeah.
There
absolutely
is
picking it up.
there is definitely something in the air, no pun intended. I really, really love
Big
I
dick.
really love
Yeah.
this. I'm yes, a big tip.
Okay.
But I really love this movie, and I'm really glad that I've found others that have discovered it and rediscovered it. I'm glad we connected with you because when I first saw it, very grainy bootleg in 2007, and then somebody uploaded it to Internet Archive. I always wished and hoped for a soundtrack and a movie, and I'm so glad it's getting the recognition it deserves now. And I'm so glad that you're doing so much more with it and you're so much more passionate about it. And we're going to get, new Black Alice books and comic books and soundtrack. I mean, it's got to feel great as like the father who birthed this thing that
Mhm.
you're having all these opportunities come up. I mean, sometimes it takes time, but you probably just don't know what to think. You're probably flabbergasted and you feel like you're in a fever dream, but it's got to feel great.
I
And I'm not trying to,
tell you,
yeah.
I do it. I do it for people like you guys, because you guys appreciate what
Mhm.
people do and the extent that they go to do them, to deliver them. We do it because we have to.
Mhm.
Right.
It's like it's that old thing that Hillary said. I climbed the mountain because it was there.
Right.
Yeah, you've got to exploit the talents that you've got, because I tell you, as I say, I'm 72. I look at life. It went past in a flash. It went past in a flash. So God, enjoy every day that you've got and exploit it to the death. Really,
Exploit it.
nothing. Exploit it. Nothing should prevent you from seeing your vision through. So for me, it's been a 40-year vision, this film, and it stays with me and it'll get buried with me. And it's being picked up by my daughter and my son and
That's
kids,
so
and
amazing.
it goes through all of these new situations that just make me smile. And it's you guys like you that help it along the way, and I thank you so from the bottom of my heart.
Thanks for making it, and thanks for keeping on it. That's all we can say.
Thank you for being a writer who doesn't, there's so many cult stars and cult writers that when their musical becomes a cult musical, they're like, oh, that was me then. But then it's great that you are like right on, you embrace this and you push it, and you not only embrace it, you continue with it, which is something that doesn't really happen.
Mate, Alice lives on. He's happening.
Well done.
I love it so much. See you later, Gonna. I love it. And I love how he goes, oh, you made me sick. I love it so much. And I always want to say the last thing before I close out, what was the conscious decision with his look, like a big beefy guy with the black braids? What was up with the black
And the
braids?
shaved, it's almost like he shaved in a bald spot, which was
yeah,
interesting.
we did. No, he created the hairstyle himself.
Okay.
With
just
these
his.
guys, a
Okay.
couple of gay guys from a mob called Tribes. They got him, and he when I if you look at Nightmare, you'll see that he's got real long curly hair, right?
Okay.
When we're about to start recording the music for Sons of Steel and doing rehearsals and stuff, Rob arrives from Western Australia, from Perth into Sydney, and he's got short cropped blonde hair. And I gone, what's this? So we get him off, and we get these meet up with these guys from Tribes, and they put all braids in his hair, sewed them all in, and he stayed that way for ages. And then we really did work on the look. He wears these red boots. They were mine. They were my boots. I wore them around all the time, but he said, they look good, so we wore them. I always wanted three-quarter coat for him, but he was a bodybuilder. See,
Mhm.
he really did have that physique. That was all. That was Rob. Rob worked out heavy metal. That was iron. That was lifting iron, right? So,
Yep.
you know, and then he'd get on the set and he'd jab himself in the leg with steroids, like bang, and he'd give himself a steroid and he'd pump
Oh
up.
my
Right?
god.
Go, now I'm cooking, but it'd make him angry, right? So he was
Yeah.
like really dirty all the time. But that was the character coming through.
No wonder he couldn't go on and keep doing that, because that's a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was doing that before the film. I mean, that part of the bodybuilding exercise was to retain the muscle. And the only way you could retain the muscle was to lift the steroid content in your body. But you know, he was a very careful man. He didn't do it illegally or anything, and he also made sure that it didn't affect his kidneys and all the rest of it. He used to sit down to breakfast with at least 30 vitamins in a dish. Pills. That's what he'd have at breakfast. He'd be eating all these pills. Extraordinary character he was. But, you know,
He sounds like he really is. He actually sounds like he really is Black Alice.
He was. He was.
Yeah.
But he became Black Alice when he went on the stage in the band, in the heavy metal band, right? If you listen to their first album, Endangered Species, which I produced, that's what that's him. He was this mild man, and then when he'd walk on stage and he'd grab hold of the microphone, he transformed. And that's what I saw when I was in Perth to record another band at the time. And they said, "Oh, do you want to see this band down at Blazers? It's a heavy metal band." I said, "Yeah, I'll go and have a look." So I go to see him, and this guy, I meet him backstage, and he's a quiet little guy, you know, and muscle bound, but he's not tall. And then I sit back and watch, and the guitar player's name's Jamie Page, which is the same out as Zeppelin. I thought, well, Jamie Page, they're all Aussie boys.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie's now a lady, by the way. And he's probably the most successful female heavy metal guitarist in the world now. He's a hell of a guitar player. And I've just been doing sessions with him and stuff. Anyhow, Rob jumps up on stage and he transforms into this beast, and he starts singing and looking, blearing at people, and the audience is retracting from him. And I go, "This guy's amazing," and that was him. Yeah. So there you go.
So
so amazing.
I love the fact that in us all there's this other beast somewhere.
And it comes out some way, some form, or some fashion. It does come out some form, and sometimes it takes pills or potions and lotions to make it come out, but it does come out. Thank you so much for taking the time. I've learned so much, but I'm just very excited for the future of this film. I'm just so excited for the present and the future of this film.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is awesome.
And
I will send you Helena's email.
I'll do that. Thank you, Helena. And I'll send you bits and pieces of everything. So all good.
All right, thank you so much. Good day, mate.
Good day.
Thanks, mate. See ya. Happening.
Bye.